Hi everyone, welcome to this tutorial on web design. I'm just spending a little bit of time here looking at the latest sports news, and I just kind of noticed that the layout of this web page is very interesting. Can you see that it's almost been kind of divided up into different rows and columns? In fact, I can clearly see that there are 1, 2, 3 columns here. In this web page, and if I zoom out, they all stay in the center all the time. So I kind of like the idea of this layout. It's very organized. The web page has been divided up into different kind of sections, and content is kind of floating next to each other to create this idea of columns. And this is what we're going to look at in today's tutorial. I've been working on a silly little web page at the moment. I've got no styling happening here and no inline styling happening in the body either. There's no styling at the moment. I've got an image tag, I've got some p tags. Oh, I've got 2 image tags. Let's have a look and see what this looks like in a web browser. Okay, so I've got a header, I've got an image with 2 associated lines of text. This is Chopper. He is such a cool dude. Well, that's true. And then we've got another image, which is a penguin, and we've got 2 associated lines of text. This is a penguin. He is pretty cool too. And then we've got a final message, have fun looking around. This isn't really connected to either of these images. Now what I want to do really is float these 2 images with their associated content so that they are next to each other rather than sitting on top of each other, just like we have in this sports website. I would like Chopper to be here with his associated text, and I would like Penguin to be here with his associated text. And if I can figure out how to do that, I'll be pretty happy. Now the first thing I'm going to do is divide up this web page into different sections. And I'm going to use something called the div tag. So here's a div tag which I'm going to use to wrap around my title of the web page. When I say title, I mean kind of like a header at the top. I don't mean the style title. Then we've got Chopper's section, which is here. So I'm going to say Chopper, sorry, not Chopper, div, and then we're going to close that div at the end of the Chopper section. Let's just tab these out so we can quickly see what's inside this section. So Chopper with his 2 lines of text, and then we come to Penguin, and I'm just going to wrap all the penguin stuff into a div. Oops. And finally we have the ending message, and you know what? I'm just going to wrap that in a div as well, just because I feel like it. Is that alright? So I can quickly see now that my web page has 4 sections. It's got a kind of a header section, which is divided away from the rest of the web page. I've got my Chopper section here, which is kind of divided up away from the rest of the web page. I've got my Penguin section, which is kind of divided up, and I've got my footer at the bottom as well. In fact, to help me keep track of what's going on here, I'm just going to give each div an ID. So the first one's going to be header. The next one is going to be Chopper. The next div is going to have an ID of Penguin. And this bottom div here is going to have an ID of footer. Brilliant. So if I save that and have a look at it in a web browser, nothing changes. What a disaster. What I need to do is style, well, definitely these 2 divs. These 2 divs contain the images with their associated text, and I need to style these. I could style them inside the div tag here. I could do this. That's one option. But the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to use the style section up here. So, the div which has an ID of chopper, that's that one, not copper, chopper, I'm going to style that. And the div that has an ID of penguin, I'm going to be styling that. And also the div that has an ID of footer, I'm definitely going to be styling that as well. And we'll look at why in a moment. Now, do you remember what I suggested was I want chopper to float next to penguin. I want them to be floating next to each other. That will create this kind of column effect. So in my chopper style section up here, I'm going to add a new style, which is float left. And I'm going to do exactly the same with penguin. Float left. So both of these divs, this is my chopper div here, and I'm styling it up here. I'm telling the chopper div to float to the left. And the penguin div, which is here, with all of its content, that will also float to the left. So if we save that and run it in Chrome, look what we've got. The chopper div is floating, the penguin div is floating, and unfortunately my footer is also floating. I don't want that to float. I want this to be at the bottom of the web page, so I have to clear that float. So float, float, and this really, I want to clear it. I want to stop it from happening. Whoops. This text here. How can I do that? What did I call it again? I gave it an ID of footer. I've got an idea. In the footer section of my styling here, I'm going to clear the left float. So chopper is going to float, penguin's going to float, and footer is going to clear that. It's going to stop that left floating. And let's see if that works. Header, float, float, and look at this. It's not floating anymore. Have fun looking around. Now then, if you're happy with what you've seen right now, you can stop the video and have a go at the challenge. If you want to keep watching the video, I'm just going to explain a couple of other things to you. Okay, so it's up to you what you want to do right now. Just maybe 2 or 3 more minutes, okay? What I'm going to do, I'm going to put all of this into a new div called, with an ID of container. And I mean everything. All of the content of my web page is going to be in a div called container. And let me just show you what that should look like. This is my div container, and everything is inside the div container. Okay? And I'm going to style that up here. My div container, I'm going to use that trick of giving it a width, let's call it 900 pixels, and margin auto. Now this will help me to center all of the content of my web page. By putting everything into a container and then styling the container, that should help me center everything in my web page. So let's save that and run it in a web browser. So now when we zoom in and zoom out, everything stays in the center all the time. Exactly the same as the sports web page. And that's how to do it. Okay? So have a go and see if you can create, see if you can divide up a web page into different kind of div sections and then style those sections so some of them are floating and others are not floating. Have a go.